G'day everyone, this is Rangadad, not financial advice, just the way I'm looking at the market. First off, happy birthday, Eddie. You watch this. Hope you have a great one. So, just wanted to start off with Citigroup today because they made the top 5 lists on the dark pool transactions, and so did XLF, so the financials ETF or index. The reason I was interested in this, when I checked out the chart, you can kind of see what Citigroup does around big dips. It'll tend to get really close to previous high and then it'll drop off. And it tends to plateau before really big drops. It actually didn't, I mean, that's probably a decent pullback, I guess, but in the 2000s, yeah, it dropped 60%. In GFC, that's got a massive drop, 98%. But you can see sort of a bit of consolidation at the top here, and then it falls away. We've actually had on Citigroup quite a while where it's been struggling to break this top. Now, the reason I'm looking at it so closely is the last couple of times it's hit this level, it's rejected, and it's been an indicator that there's something more going on in the economy. And we've just had a heap of trades come through on it. It's pulled back, hit the high yesterday, pulled back from there. Hey, how you going, Michelle? And yeah, we just had some massive trades come through right at the peaks here. So that's potentially flashing a bit of a warning sign there. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that for the time being, but I will look at XLF as well. So XLF had a big dark pool transaction. So it hasn't made the top 100 of all time, but that was $130 million dark pool block. So you'd kind of expect that to be a pullback. Pretty sure those guys aren't going all in for a breakout. And I don't think that's a great sign, to be honest. Typically, when they're selling off before a previous peak, it has led to more downside. Yeah, just again starting to see some signs in the financial sector, and that's the sector you don't really want to see it in, that we may be peaking. Now, I'm still looking at it more like we're probably going to get a 10% correction to start with in general stocks. Everyone's calling for it though. Like everyone said, we haven't had one for a long time and they're getting a little nervous. So whenever that's the case, I kind of, I don't know, it can keep going, put it that way, just to get rid of all the shorters that come into the market. But at some stage, it is going to roll over, and it just looks like it's going to roll over pretty hard. Quick look at the rest of the dark pools. There's nothing really coming through yet. Little bit of selling today, through the middle of the day as well, kind of on Coinbase. Not huge, but nothing to really go off. Nothing so far on IBIT. And IBIT's actually holding quite high. Be interesting to see one comes through at the close like it has the rest of this week. The last couple of weeks they've been trading at the close. Sentiment yesterday still dropping off with smart money. Dumb money still loading up. This just to me tells you that we're going to be close to a top here. XLP, nothing huge coming through today. Consumer discretionary, decent trade, Savo, and it's led to a bit of a sell. There was a sweep at the high here too, so the fact that we haven't really broken above that high, I think consumer discretionary is probably coming down quite a bit. And staples actually may get a bit more upside, which is probably going to be an indicator that we're, again, just going for a pullback of some description. Marathon, nothing huge on Marathon today so far. Yeah, it's just wait and see on that one. Be looking for something to come through at the end. If we don't get any major trades on IBIT or Marathon or Coinbase right at the end of session in terms of dark pools, then that would actually, to me, suggest that Bitcoin's probably going to go a bit higher over the weekend and into next week. ETF wise, there's still decent money flows. Hasn't got today's on there, obviously, but it is easing off a little bit. Again, it'd be interesting to get an update on that at the end of the day. And CVD on futures is sort of trending up still. Interesting that funding rates have actually come back down to zero, well, basically even again as well. Last time that happened, it was a local top. Tends to be a reasonable topping signal, although it can happen at the lows as well, so just be a little bit careful with that assumption. At the moment, like you'd look at it and say, well, okay, on the way up, significant drop in funding rates is probably leading to a top. If you're coming down, a significant drop in funding rates is probably close to a bottom. That's how I would look at that. And that seems to be where we're at. So we've been sort of grinding down on this. There's no, like, the indication on this for me is that this may actually be a top. And that may have been the top of this particular leg up. That's probably the most bearish look at it. Lots of selling pressure coming through here on the bid-ask delta. So that's again another decent topping signal for this. Just depends if the market still wants to grind into the liquidity above. And the reason I say that is there is quite a bit of it. We haven't really got a topping signal here on the funding rates on CoinAnk, and not huge volumes either. this session. All the volume seemed to be thrown around yesterday. There's some big, like that's a massive liquidation level there. So 107,500-ish. Kind of expected to at least get up into that. If we took that out, that'll make the rest of these look a lot bigger. There's not a lot in the charts above that level though. Maybe 108,500, but there is a lot of sell orders above. So compared to the ones below, the ones that are sitting there on the order book that are big orders, there is a lot more above. And that's kind of what we had when we did make our way up to the high when we hit 108 the first time. So that's kind of what which indicator is up. Which indicator is that? This is CoinAnk. You're talking about Fund Pro or? Oh, this is so large orders. So I look at large orders. That's just liquidation levels. This is all Binance too. Doesn't aggregate them. Does that answer your question, Michael? Okay, cool. So yeah, look, CVD on spot, it has been increasing throughout this whole run, which is good. Just that general run up. So that's kind of looking positive. And yeah, the amount of orders above here compared to the ones below, like there is a lot down to 98K. There's a lot of orders there, long orders. I'd expect though, if we start dropping hard, I think a lot of these are probably going to disappear. And that tends to be what happens when you're going on a quick drop. So we've got to be a little bit cautious, but there's a lot of stats as well that are suggesting higher is potentially likely. I'm not going to go over them in detail, but Crown, Eric Crown, crypto on YouTube, last video is worth a watch. He goes through some higher time frame setups that have a pretty decent hit rate. And they're sitting there on the weekly and the 5-day and stuff like that as looking like they should play out. Sorry. So in generally looking at this, you're kind of still bullish until proven otherwise. You'd want to see a decent drop off in cumulative volume delta thing or a big topping signal here. We haven't really got that at the moment. So at least 107,500, I would think we're heading towards. But if we break that level, it should really push into the 110s again. Yeah, Marathon Digital, nothing huge yet. What else have we got? Oh, liquidation. So the heat map. Did hit a decent liquidation level there from just the short-term stuff. There's longs building below, but I think the levels that we're at now, I'd expect it to go up before it comes down. But yeah, and CME looks like it's going to close. If CME, I think it was closed above about 105,000, then that should be bullish for the next few weeks, to be honest. But yeah, so there's a fair chunk of liquidity quite close above here. It's got to go a fair way down to get the same sort of liquidity below. Yeah, 1 week looking even more attractive above. Interesting, there's a lot coming in around the 125. Again, still a bit to take up there into the 107,500 to 700 area. If we're going for that, I'd suggest it's probably going to keep going. At this stage, it's just whether it is happy with that level or whether it wants to go up into the 114, 115. And again, that's going to suck in a lot of people that trade breakouts. A lot of the bigger guys, they're momentum traders, and they'll throw money at something when they see it breaking key levels. So that we could see a bit of a short squeeze going on. And realistically, that 115 to 120 seems like a reasonable target. I think you'll have a lot of sell orders come into the charts if we're breaking these levels that would be up around that 120. So yeah, always worthwhile going to the bigger timeframes as well. At this stage, that's looking bullish as well. Okay, back to charts. Let's go BTC. Again, kind of just looks like a dull market, and we always say if you're a brave man if you're shorting a dull market. It's just fraught with danger, especially in Bitcoin land. Momentum's still where we're sitting at the moment in terms of the momentum settings that I use is actually still postured below the signal line. And BBWP is decreasing. So that's not a great sign. That's actually a little bit bearish. It is still above the bullish control zone though. So if this were to tick down below that level, then I would say we're actually coming down, and it's probably going to be at the same point the rest of the market's coming down. It's just whether or not we get, like, what we get over the weekend could change that as well. So, Saturday, Sunday here after a few days up was kind of flat, and that did lead to a bit of a sell-off. But if we're getting down below this zone, and I guess just seeing the amount of selling that's meeting the buyers at the moment, it's kind of does give cause for concern that a bigger correction may play out, which would break a lot of indicators of crowns that are typically pretty good, like very high hit rate. But yeah, they also haven't confirmed yet. So it just, with this sort of thing, this could literally, we could have a $10,000 candle and this will reset back to the upside and it'll be game on 150K. I'm not loving this, but I'm not necessarily bearish on it either. The one thing I would add to the bear case is global liquidity is ticking back down, and it looks like it may actually reject that level. Got to be careful on this because trend lines on these things aren't necessarily great. So I wouldn't say this is really breaking to the downside, but we don't want to see too many days of downside on the global liquidity chart. We want to see this bouncing to the upside again. Go up to, let's do NASDAQ. So NASDAQ, oh, by the way, the skew yesterday it did suggest that we were potentially going to come down. Now, that's off almost exactly the same level that we started the last really decent pullback. Yeah, I guess this is likely to be down again today. And that would suggest that we're going to go into a bit of a red week next week, or at least a few days anyway. It'd be interesting to see how hard the sentiment shifts, the smart money sentiment indicator shifts once we do start pulling back. If they start buying aggressively, then that'll suggest that it's going to be just a short correction. If they take their time to get in, then it might be a bigger one. All right, but yeah, Skew did suggest like that we were getting close to the top. VIX is down, bouncing a little. So again, yesterday I mentioned that we're getting into an area here which does typically signify a top in markets. Like bounces from this sort of area can see decent pullbacks. And it looks like that's starting at the moment. So yeah, if you want to figure out where the dip is done, probably look for this particular indicator to reverse at a high level. So the VIX 1 day is a pretty good indicator. So yeah, NASDAQ, we could chop around the first couple of days as well. I mean, this is a pretty aggressive pullback, but don't be surprised if this chops a little bit, because people are going to go massive short on it, and typically it wants to take those shorts out before it actually does its pullback, unless it's just a minor correction. Equal weight coming back as well. That was a pretty good zone for a pullback. It hasn't come back as much as I thought it would, though. What I am thinking may happen on this pullback is you may actually get some flows across sectors. So yeah, NASDAQ and S&P might pull back reasonably hard, like aspire back into 597-ish, that sort of level. If we start breaking below that, or we break this lower trend line, then you know it's probably going to go quite a bit further. Sorry, where was I going with that? Oh yeah, and what's potentially going to happen is, like, we haven't seen much run on IWM. So IWM's been lagging quite a bit in comparison to its previous high compared to NASDAQ and S&P 500. So to me, IWM may get a bit of interest here. If it doesn't, then I'd also be looking at that as a potential sign that the market's going to pull back a bit harder, because typically IWM, the smaller stocks, normally they go harder than what the S&P 500 does in the first 6 months or so of a new president. Particularly one that's removing a lot of, or trying to remove a lot of barriers to small business and stuff like that. So the fact they haven't done that yet, it's a little concerning. But what we could see is money flow into them and out of the bigger ones. So that's, and the fact that we have kind of confirmed that breakout as well, it would make sense for this to maybe pause for a little bit and then run reasonably hard to the upside. Equal weight S&P 500. It's actually sitting reasonably high still. So that again suggests it's probably money's shifting around a little bit, not necessarily just completely coming out of the market. XLIs, yeah, probably going to pull back as well. So XLY, XLP, this is what I was suggesting before, that consumer discretionary is starting to pull back, and staples were staying relatively flat to up even. So there is a bit of shift of money from consumer discretionary into staples, which is normally staples is defensive, consumer discretionary is generally risk on. So there's a bit of shift in sentiment in the market in general. If we start to break down key levels on this, then again, I'd be looking for a much bigger correction on the markets. So at least your 10%, but we'd have to be on the lookout for more potentially as well. This is going to be another key thing with little bounce in the XLP versus SPY. So again, shows a shift into defensive, but no real panic until we start to break this trend line. So equal weights pulling back as well, and decent close. It just wiped out the last 3 days. So, well, if it closes around there. So yeah, pullback is likely on the cards next week. Probably be a little bit of a choppy one, but should be a pullback nonetheless. Yeah. Interesting that the equal weight consumer discretionary didn't make a new all-time high, even though the S&P 500 did. That's probably not a great sign for the markets either. How long have we had this? Interesting that it was showing a similar sign before the oh no, that's 2021, that's after COVID. Well, that was before the pullback in 2022, end of 2021. Similar sort of thing here. Didn't make another high, and then obviously COVID hit, but we were due for a correction there anyway. Where's the big one? Even the 2015 pullback. So this is the big one. June 07, July 07 didn't make another high, and then we broke below that previous low. So equal weight consumer discretionary. Not looking great. I'd be looking at this trend line here, break below that trend line, and probably looking at the start of the next recession, I would think. KRE has actually not made another high either. So regional banking's really struggling. Again, not a great sign. I'd suggest if we're breaking below that low there, things are going to look a little bit nasty on regional banking. Haven't got a great trend line to go off there, but potentially one there too. So some reasonably key levels for regional banking. Sort of closures above these candles, sorry, closures below these candles here, and it's not going to look great. Still haven't confirmed above this trend line either. Given what the rest of the market is looking like doing in the following week, I wouldn't expect it to make any new highs either. Yeah, home construction too. If we break this neckline on home construction, I would suggest that's a pretty good indication that we're going into a major pullback as well. But even as it stands, like if we don't really clear that moving average, it's probably already indicating that. Yeah, I'll just go back and see what it looks like at GFC. Not great. Again, June 07 to July 07 was some pretty key times on markets. Like home construction was breaking key support levels. So it's another one to watch out for. We're getting close. Not confirmed yet, but one thing in recessions and stuff, you go too early and you short too early, you can miss quite a lot. Or if you are actually shorting and not just pulling money from the market, then you can lose your pants pretty easy. Yeah, home builders hitting key resistance here too. Same sort of deal. Not looking great. Semis. This is unfortunate. Semis pulling back into this zone is not great. So that was an unconfirmed breakout there. DJI Gold's pulling back a little bit as well. DJT's pulling back. Yeah, if these two break this level, then I'll just be pulling all liquidity out of the market, even crypto. Just wait. Put it into short funds, fair market funds. DAX is finally starting to pull back a little bit as well. DAX, I mean, that is looking like a blow off top, to be honest. UK 100. Yeah, you want UK 100 to find some support around 8,400. Otherwise, again, that's a pretty bearish sign. That would be a Wyckoff fake out, and you would expect it some stage over the next month or so to break below this level and probably keep going down. Japanese market's actually looking stronger than most of them, which, they did increase their interest rates. So same thing happened last time. It did get a bit of a run up. 20-year treasury. Yeah, it's had a bit of a buy there as well. So people are kind of expecting interest rates to not go up much more, put it that way. High yield junks hit our resistance level. Interesting that it's gone up today, considering the market's pulled back. That's typically not a bearish signal. And LQDIEF hasn't pulled back much either. So these don't often lag the market. Normally they lead the market. So keep that in mind, but it could just mean we get another sort of day or so of up just to get rid of some of the shorts out of the market before we pull back. Yeah, looking at bonds, 2-year and 10-year both pulling back. That's pretty well all you need to know at the moment. It's good for the markets. Should be good for the markets. Copper finding some resistance at that level still, so that's kind of bearish overall. Gold going on a decent run, pullback from the previous high, so we've basically recovered that vector. I do expect gold to keep going still at least into this midline of a channel, and then probably pullbacks into this 2700, 2720 sort of level, at which point I would actually expect it to break back to the upside. Silver's still sitting above key support, some of these key moving averages and that trend line. So silver will probably have a bit of a run at some stage. Dixie, big pullback on Dixie. So there is probably some carry trade unwind stuff going on, but in general, the market was expecting it. So Japanese yen, not much of a jump on Japanese yen, which is a little surprising. Hopefully this is just a bit of a rejection off resistance and we actually find some support soon on global liquidity. It's kind of what you want to see if you're bullish on the up markets overall again, which we kind of are. I still think March we're going to get a little bit of a correction here and then a run up into March, maybe April, and then you'll start to see the proper top. But there's certainly some signs at the moment that are a little worrying that we may have already found the top. Especially the Mag 7 still not really going very well. Nvidia's failing breakouts. So target on Nvidia here would be around that 129. Just check that car makers still haven't broken to the downside yet either. The total crypto market cap still, like, even though the market made a new all-time high in here, the crypto market cap did not, and that's a little concerning for me. Shows there's probably more money coming out than there is going in at the moment. Yeah, we haven't really troubled the bottom side of this level here either on stablecoins versus Bitcoin, so that's a little concerning as well. Break above this trend line, and I'd say Bitcoin's actually going down quite hard. Some key levels there to look at on different indicators. Ethereum still sucks, but looks like it wants to close the daily above the point of control. The issue is it's still below the 200 EMA. We've sort of failed to break out of that 200 EMA a few times so far. Wicks on the daily, close above, close below. It's not like in this area. There's a lot of resistance in ETH at the moment. So yeah, Ethereum struggling still, which isn't great for the overall market. What is a good sign is if CME closes above 105, then the chances are that it will actually break to the upside next week. Now, that doesn't mean that Bitcoin couldn't actually drop over the weekend into some key levels, and then we close the gap on the way up next week. But that's a pretty important close. 2 hours to go. See what it looks like on the shorter time frames. I mean, it's heading down pretty hard at the moment. That's going to be an interesting close on CME. Closure below 105 on CME won't. It's probably not going to be great for short term on Bitcoin. Yeah, even that Bitcoin turning around from where it is seems a little bit premature. So something to be mindful of. We are coming into the 50 EMA and the middle of the linear regression channel, so keep that in mind as well. Stochastic momentum on the shorter time frames is coming out of the bullish control zone as well. So yeah, probably. I mean, this is a pivotal point, really. We break again to the upside and happy days, but CBD's kind of looks like it's shifting to the downside as well. It does look like it wants to take a rest before it heads up any further. So yeah, look. It's kind of hard to be bullish looking at this chart, to be honest. At least in the short term, which unless we get a big switch to the upside bouncing off this 50 EMA or even the 200, then I'd be a little bit more leaning towards bearish, but we'll see what happens. It's, yeah, kind of a critical close on CME. Solana. Oh. Solana's, I mean, it's momentum to the downside at the moment, below the 50 EMA. 200 might hold it up. It's also a fair level of support and decent volume area down around 254, 255, maybe even 256. If Solana actually bounces off this trend line, then that could be a pretty decent move to the upside as well. But Bitcoin at this stage, I think it's got to come back a bit further. But proper failure of this, like proper downside momentum, will probably occur if Bitcoin breaks below 101. 101 is a key level. For the time being, macro wise, it's still relatively bullish. It's kind of on the edge. So it's just a matter of whether Bitcoin can buck the likely trend in the US markets that are looking a little bit more bearish. Melania and Trump are still struggling. XRP, and that looks like rolling over as well. Typically, that's not a bullish chart, but again, even XRP is coming into key support here. Not looking good though. Like for the time being, momentum's to the downside, and you'd kind of expect it to at least come down, recover a lot of these vectors down here, potentially into $3, $5. Maybe a little bit of support around a 200 EMA, but it has broken through and bounced back above that a couple of times so far. So into $3.05 for XRP looks likely this weekend. If it doesn't find some serious support here and bounce from these levels, that's where it's headed, which would also suggest that Bitcoin's probably heading in the same direction. All right. I think that's about it for today. So I'm actually leaning towards bearish in the short term, but it's really going to depend on the close today, I think. Okay, I'll catch us later.